Greetings and salutations, viewers. Welcome to another episode of Game Break. I am Charles, coming to you today with another episode of World and Economica, episode 2, I think part 4? So I guess another part, not another episode. Last time round, we went for a walk. So in typical World and Economica style, we are not going to be progressing the plot very quickly. In each episode, we're just going to get little snippets of character growth and little peeks into the overall storyline. Last episode, like World and Economica episode 1, which was like a 30 or 35 episode series, gives the indication that we are in here for the long haul. So thank you all for joining me for yet another part. Let's dive back in. The lively, sweaty-smelling but cheerful laughs of unending happiness spilled out from the other side of the door. Rena stood dumbfounded, staring into the closed door. Right, we're checking up on the one potentially credible situation. It's difficult to make up a complete lie. Eh? Rena was startled at what I said and turned to me. If a certain amount of it is true, then it's easier to fill the rest with lies. What do you mean by... The 3 mothers cooking in there are probably the 3 salaried employees, and 8 volunteers probably refers to the children. I think the common house for immigrants thing means they figured they'd make good somehow and leave. And the work support is so they can look for better jobs, which isn't a bad thing. But... And I don't believe the financial support they want for their activities is wrong either. 400 moles ahead for housing would make it difficult to save money. I looked up at the 3-story building and shrugged a bit at its sheer size. Their biggest problem would be accommodating 17 people. Huh? I thought that they'd need at least that many people, that many employees and volunteers for this scale. But 17 people here in total? No way. This 3-story building wasn't that big. If you put 3 families in there, it'd be a madhouse, probably without even a place to step. The parents of the hooligan workers give them a place to sleep, but I've seen firsthand how many people and how much is required to support them. Coordinating efforts to consolidate a lie will result in a slip-up eventually. This proposal is the same. I took the document out of my bag as I spoke. We'll have to reject it. But... Rena stuttered, looking up at the building once again. You're rejecting it. She was aware that this wasn't how a superior should have behaved. The financial aid petitions are meant to be for welfare services. But if the money is going to help people in need, then... I realized my tone was much stricter than it needed to be. Also, my expressionlessness was probably giving off a much harsher impression than I needed to. Even so, I didn't take back what I said. Rules are rules. If it's for the welfare assistance, then it's a different ticket window. This is fraud. Fair enough. I said the sort of thing a prized pupil bound by rules and regulations would say. Long ago, I would have cut any corners necessary, regardless of who became the butt of the jokes. But down what path did my devious mind end up leading me? I was blinded by my own behavior and insights, and rushed down the path the Reaper pointed out to me. What awaited me there was a gaping pitch-black hole. I still vividly remember that terror. That's why I said what I did to Rena, so she could protect herself.
But...
Rena muttered and hung her head before she looked over at me.
But this is the last application, isn't it?
That's true.
If we reject this, then all of them will have been rejected, right?
Then, at least one. When I responded, Rena looked down. I understand what Rena wanted to say. Wouldn't it be fine if the money is going to people who need it, even if it's bending the rules? She was right. But I lost my ability to think like that. I paid a heavy price when I learned what that type of thinking led to. As you're my boss, I'll hand it over to you. Saying this, I pushed the document to Rena's bosom as I approached her on my crutches. I did all that I could do. The rest is at your discretion now. Fair enough. Rena fidgeted around, taking the documents thrust out at her. I was passing the buck, but it was all I could do. But just letting that application go through won't really help that family. When I said that, Rena looked at me like a little girl being teased to the point of tears. The fact that the rules are being broken still remains. I spoke like I was criticizing Rena, but I was really criticizing myself. You should think hard about it. It's impossible to change the decision once it's been made. I looked away as I spoke. If for no other reason than for yourself.
Huh?
Rena raised her head and looked at me. I did an about face without looking at Rena and began walking off. Let's head back. It really does get pitch black here after dark. It seemed like Rena wanted to say something, but instead she just embraced the documents and followed after me. Coming out of the rows of buildings, we arrived at a busy road. Rena called out to me as I was about to enter the area.
Feeble, isn't it?
When I looked back, her face was drooped down so I couldn't see it. But I understood what she meant by those words. That's true. Feeble. That was the unadulterated truth. Well then, see you tomorrow. Rena gave a tired and weary smile, then disappeared into a streetcar. I never did hear what she would do with that document she would stuffed into her bag. I wanted to head back to my room and drink, even though that wasn't something I did, but I had that promise with Chris. Except that now I felt a little different about not wanting to go. People were not that feeble, nor were they alone. The existence of Chris and Risa's church helped me to remember that. Chris was able to grab honors from a very high place, and Risa's stubbornness still roots itself deep in the lunar surface. I thought that maybe I should have invited Rena along. She would probably just return to that cramped room without anyone welcoming her back and gnaw on that dry chicken sandwich she forgot to eat at lunch. But I had no way of contacting her now. This was yet another irrevocable decision. For a moment, my right hand began throbbing, but I was able to get through it. I could see Rena again tomorrow. I walked alone under the veil of darkness, soon to envelop the city, hunched over and dragging my foot as others made their merry way home. After buying some alcohol from a general store that knew my face, I returned to the church. The silence as I entered felt almost unreal. I pushed the ever-ajar door, bearing a notice that read, "The joy of the faith is open to all," a bit more open. The sun had set, and it was now difficult to see inside the church. Because they were unable to pay for the continual use of electricity under the sudden price spike, only 1 or 2 lights were on. It did seem that Risa was there, as I was able to hear the sound of tableware being cleaned up.
Goodness, your timing is bad.
Risa appeared. Her sleeves were rolled up. Quits already?
Of course not. I had them go shopping for a bit as they were making too much of a mess. I arranged for them to pick up food and drinks, too.
Here, I brought you a present.
Thanks. Can I put it over there?
Empty bottles and garbage filled the kitchen. After putting the alcohol on the counter, I rolled up my sleeves and picked up a case of empty bottles.
You can just have a seat.
I'll help.
Really? Then can you take that over to the storage room?
Anywhere is fine.
Yes, please.
The storage room was next to the connected room. It was given to the church by a patron when it was being set up. When Risa had to sell off some of her rare books, some rich person was impressed by her activities. A year and a half ago, they closed up shop on the lunar surface and returned to Terra, but they left her those 2 rooms in the complex as a present. Risa called out to me abruptly as I was about to take the case of empty cans off to where she told me.
Oh.
What?
There's someone praying in the church, so please keep quiet.
Praying? That's new.
Hey now, people come now and then.
To think that there are people like that up here?
It bothers you?
Not really. It's not like I'm trying to mark off my territory.
Men always think it's their roost when they stay for a while.
I shrugged my shoulders at Risa, then went off carrying the empty bottles. Since Risa opened a church here, of course Christians would come to pray. It's just that people, even Christians, were amazed to see a church on the moon. The moon was on the other end of the sky, and because of its immense greed, the Pope referred to it as a den of evil in a Terran encyclical, meaning there were no official churches on the lunar surface. The ones here were allegedly run by devotees like Risa, who think prayers to God were necessary precisely because it was a den of evil. As there was no persecution here, it didn't really become pivotal for the people. Moreover, there was no time for those busy making money to stop and pray quietly. The people who came to pray were probably the poor who lived around the area. They could have been fired and had time to kill. But it wasn't like praying would get you a job or anything. Long ago, a mean-spirited statistician gauged the average lifespan of the faithful. It turned out to be the same as normal people. I do understand the desire to pray to God in extreme situations, though. I understood, but I'd rather never be in a situation again where I needed to pray. I was somehow able to make it to the next room by relying on the light flooding in from the outside windows, as most of the lights were left off. It seemed that some of the rooms were being used as boarding rooms, and people with nowhere else to go had been sheltered here. Everyone Risa had watched over had found work. Risa laughed that she was happy now, but also a bit lonely. My shadow stretched down the dark corridor as I carried the empty bottles to the storage room. On the way, I passed by the chapel Risa mentioned. The candlelight bled through the cracks of the slanted shutters on the walls of the room. Peering into the cracks unthinkingly, I saw a figure kneeling before the crucified Christ. A girl? She kept her hair long and the hem of her skirt spread out as she knelt. She was praying quite earnestly, as she wasn't budging an inch. What could you be praying for so badly here on the moon? I felt that stealing glances at her praying would be intrusive, so I tried my best to carry the bottles carefully, leaving them next to the storage room and going back. A devout Christian. I felt like I just saw a rare creature. What's Risa then? Risa was at the living room table taking a break when I returned. It's rare to see a real visitor. Risa cringed, showing she had no words for what I said, but still filled an empty metal cup with tea and placed it in front of an empty chair.
There aren't that many devout churches here on the moon.
It's amazing that you can wear that without anyone getting angry. I pulled up a chair and drank the tea Risa poured for me. It was a Chinese type of fermented tea, and it had a bitter taste.
Goodness, they got angry quite often on Terra.
Risa returned to Terra for 2 reasons. To get rid of her rare books, and to raise money and find personnel for a church on the lunar surface. Seems like it was a stormy ride. It was because of the papal encyclical, but not just that. There were many different sects just within Christianity, as well as people who felt that churches themselves should be gone. Regardless, there were countless believers on Terra, yet next to no organizations or religious structures on the moon. The reason could be summed up in an old mafia movie catchphrase: it gets in the way of business. And it was just that. Even if there were faithful here, they did not foolishly bring unsolved problems from Terra to the lunar surface. There was a rather pragmatic idea that money and resources shouldn't be wasted on a problem like this, which hasn't been resolved in over 2,000 years. So you could say that Risa was a nuisance to quite a few people. Risa laughed and said it felt like it had gone back to the times of our forefathers. I finally understood the meaning behind that after some studying. So, is that why you're wearing that getup?
I'd rather you say it shows my determination.
Risa, being able to say that with such composure, was like gravity, unfaltering, even on the moon. Powerful and massive. Amazing.
Huh?
I said amazing. Risa stared at me, then intentionally looked all around the place. What? Was it that weird?
To think I'd be complimented by Haru. What a surprise.
It's amazing, being able to stay faithful here on the moon. I said that while staring out of the window.
Did something happen?
When I looked back over at Risa, she was chuckling as she peered into her steaming cup. It was very much like Risa to not let her worries show. It's nothing.
Nothing?
Yeah, nothing. I answered, then continued. Nothing at all. Nothing, you see. I lost my dreams, the girl I went hand in hand with, and was trying to at least cling on to the sentimental notion of being a champion of justice. I understood that it was nothing but a cheap facade. If I wanted to be a real champion of justice, then I'd go along with Rena, put my seal of approval on the application from those immigrant couples, and hand it off to our superiors. Yet, what came out of my mouth were the pointless rules and regulations. And if you ask me why I said it, it was because I was afraid. I was afraid to make decisions for myself. Afraid I might make a mistake again. Afraid I might hurt someone again. Afraid I might lose something important again. That was why I felt that maybe I could just at least help people who are struggling. As Rena aptly stated, It wouldn't hurt anyone if you just didn't participate in the race and gave a little first aid to the injured. There was no monster waiting around the bend to steal away everything you have. All the responsibility I thrust onto Rena came from my own fears. I looked at my right hand resting on top of the table. It became stiff, like a severed piece of meat, but it didn't spasm. My body went from movable to immovable. My heart felt as if it was being grasped by necrosis, completely powerless and supine.
Haru? At the least, I am here.
It was short, but that one phrase held so much meaning. I lowered my head as I felt something like embarrassment. I was probably relieved and a bit happy. Then, right at that opportune time, there came a knock on the church door. There were few who would knock on that open door.
Hello.
As Risa answered, Chris with her disheveled blonde hair appeared from a dark corridor.
I'm back.
As if responding to that timid answer, Risa gave a wry smile before she went to the sink to rinse out her cup. She dropped in some cubes from the freezer and filled it once more with water. The ice made a pleasant crackling sound.
Here's some water. Oh, thanks.
Chris appeared to be missing something most of the time, except now she had bits of food and traces of drinks spilled all over her clothes.
You got your clothes dirty. Come on, drink that and go change. Phew. Okay, I'll go do that. Was it crazy over there?
Chris closed her eyes and made a face. Then, after drinking another mouthful of water, she let out a burp.
So much so that Saru didn't come out of the bathroom. He didn't? That's intense. I'd rather not call them back here.
Chris's laugh cheerfully, since she was probably drunk. Risa looked at Chris in this state and laughed in disbelief.
Come on, go and change. Okay, thanks for the water.
Chris put the cup down and shakily made her way towards her room. Chris was living with Risa here. She stayed with my family when Risa was down on Terra, but I had to move to a dorm when I became a work scholarship student. So when Risa set up the church here, she moved into it. She said she was going to live in a dorm when she got into college so as to no longer be a bother to Risa. But she hasn't brought it up lately, so Risa probably convinced her not to leave. Risa was Risa. She gets lonely and likes looking after people. Fair enough.
If I call back the drunks, everything will be a mess again. It feels like I've been cleaning up since the morning. Like trying to make a beautiful picture in the sand.
Though she sighed as she said that, she didn't look like she disliked it at all. Risa had a big heart that accepted anything. Because of that, I couldn't bring myself to say anything about it to her.
All right, now to finish this up.
Anything I can help with? When I asked, Risa shrugged a bit as she put the kettle on the portable burner.
There is.
What?
Be here as much as you can tomorrow.
When I looked at Risa at the sink with half-closed eyes, she stuck out a bit of her tongue and turned to the side.
Well, that wasn't actually a joke. I just hate being the only sober one here.
I got it.
I thought you'd say so.
Risa smiled for a moment.
Then I'm going to throw out the trash and check out the shop a bit. Go pour some tea once it boils.
Okay.
Also... No, it's nothing. It's fine.
Risa laughed it off as she put cups out on the table, then carried out the garbage bag with both hands. I looked at the kettle as it made a small sputtering sound, then noticed something unusual as I looked on the top of the table. 2 cups? I had my own here. See? One of the cups was one of the pretty ceramic ones used for guests. As I stared at that, bewildered, the door connecting to the next room beyond my line of sight slowly opened. Let me guess, another girl. Hey, it's another girl. The girl that was praying earnestly in the chapel was with Chris in her change of clothes. She had a shimmering long platinum blonde hair and bowed her head in a small nod when I poured her tea, unlike Chris. Her elegance was very out of place with this church. No, rather, this area. Also, I didn't think what she was wearing was appropriate here. I'd only seen her figure from behind when she was kneeling in the church, so all I knew was that she was wearing a skirt. The outfit of this girl sitting across from me was almost like that of a princess from an old European fairy tale.
Wonderful.
The voice which passed through her tender lips was clear, as if it were filtered through crystals. The elegant way she held her cup was completely different from Chris, who sat next to her. However, this blonde princess conversed with smiles as she spoke to Chris, who was hugging her cup with both hands.
Risa is a tea fanatic. The coffee was wonderful as well, I recall. I can't drink bitter coffee, though.
The princess smiled elegantly at Chris when she scrunched her shoulders and cringed as if she was drinking it right at that moment. This type of informal, chatty conduct wasn't something the bashful Chris could handle with a stranger. But given I was staring into my mobile terminal screen, I was in no position to criticize Chris's social conduct. I met the princess's gaze when I looked up. I had a feeling that I had seen her face before somewhere. Have we met before? The princess tilted her head to the side slightly and chuckled when I asked. Chris went frantic and tried to speak, but she was gently stopped by the princess's white-gloved hand in an overly formal manner. Chris closed her mouth, appearing a bit troubled at the small palm turned up at her.
Would you happen to be Yoshiharu Kawara?
She inquired about my name from across the table. I knew very well that I had an emotionless expression, but this time it wasn't because my face didn't move. I guess we must have met somewhere before.
Not at all.
The princess spoke, then drank her tea. Her refined etiquette made it difficult to find a way to question her.
I do, however, know about you. Actually, I had Chris here tell me.
Chris shrunk into her shoulders and looked at me warily.
There's a reason for this. You see, I forced Chris to tell me.
So...
Yes, allow me to get straight to the point.
And we're gonna have to find out just what that point is next episode. So it looks like we have a new character to play with and learn about. Not sure she is going to be an actual princess, but we shall have to find out. It's gonna be getting harder and harder as we go through because I really do not do female voices. The higher pitch is tricky for me, especially if I have to go back and forth from Haru to anyone else. Haru, I'm pretty much getting down how I want him to sound. I feel like Chris is a little more bashful and reserved, so it's going to be a little more timid and quiet. Rena is kind of a little bit a step above, but still somewhat reserved. And then there's Risa, who is very energetic. Although, he's kind of coming off as a little bit C-3PO in regards to energy, which is a bit odd. I'm not sure how I feel about that. Might have to tweak that. And now we have a new person, a princess, who I'm probably gonna have to put my shoulders back and sit up straight whenever I try to speak her words, just to sound more refined and posh. And then there's various other characters, and hopefully Hagana makes an appearance at some point. Hopefully she didn't disappear forever. But we shall have to find all this out next time. As always, thank you for joining me. I hope you're having fun with this series. I'm getting into it. I'm having fun with it. Until next time, as always, go be creative. Go play some video games, go enjoy some stories, go create stories of your own and share them with others so we can all have some fun. And I will see you all next time.